Good morning. Welcome to the King's Report for the 16th year of Changi, the 6th month and the 14th day by the heavenly calendar. Claiming elder sitting in for the second king of Changi Kyung-jin-moon. Let's go take our usual tour around the kingdom. Right now in Chongpyeong, Tennessee, it is 70 degrees and sunny and getting up to 88 today, humid with clouds and sun. A thunderstorm around this afternoon. Tonight, 68 for a low, partly cloudy and humid, a thunderstorm in spots this evening, followed by a thunderstorm in parts of the area late. Father's hometown of Cheongju, North Carolina province in Korea. Currently 86 degrees, mostly clear, and getting down to 75 tonight. Very clear, very warm, and very humid. Tomorrow, 94 for a high, mostly sunny and hot, very humid. Danger of dehydration. At the Cheonryung Palace in Northeast Pennsylvania, currently 74 and sunny, 86 for high today, clouds and sun with a couple of heavy thunderstorms beginning in the late morning, humid. And then in Liberty Rock RV Park in Limestone County, Texas, right now 71 and mostly cloudy today, getting up to 90, partly sunny and humid. An afternoon thunderstorm, any thunderstorms can cause flash flooding, but as I showed you yesterday on the map, Limestone County is a bit east of the big sort of flooding area that is in the news right now. So they don't appear to be directly affected. I have not seen any news about any casualties in Limestone County. And tonight, 73 for a low, thunderstorm around this evening, otherwise cloudy and humid. At the Suncheon Palace in Korea, currently 81 and mostly clear. Tonight, clear and humid, 75. Tomorrow, heavy, hazy sun, very hot. Danger of dehydration, high of 98 at the Suncheon Palace. And at the Gunma Palace, it is now 89, partly cloudy, getting down to 76 tonight. Clear, partly cloudy, warm, and very humid. Tomorrow, partly sunny and very hot. Widely separated thunderstorms in the afternoon, 97. And then Ilan, Taiwan, currently 85 and overcast, getting down to 78 tonight. Tomorrow, cloudy, a morning thunderstorm in parts of the area, followed by a couple of heavy thunderstorms in the afternoon, high of 92. So it looks like Suncheon Palace takes the high mark today. All right, 98 degrees. Okay, let's go to Father's Word. Let's see where it takes us today. And I'm in the life of the owner of Cheonryuk, chapter 2, section 3. Education of the citizens of Kingdom of Heaven will take place in the family. That's what true family and true families. I'm sorry, I forgot the word true there. That's the title of the subsection or section 3. Families on the earth are factories for recreating the citizens that can be taken into the Kingdom of Heaven. We must act as the owners of that factory until we go to heaven, until we go to the spirit world. Okay? So if we just set the path correctly, there is no need to educate sons and daughters. They will naturally go that path. 자기 하나님이 다 갖고 있습니다. Their God, 자기 하나님, that's what it says, their God will have everything. Well, there's no need for education. It's because of the fall that it became the way it is today. Because of the fall, we don't know the fundamental things. Okay, so it's because of the fall. Yeah, so he's talking about the ideal, right? The ideal. In the meanwhile, yes, we do need to educate our families, but he's talking about what it would be like in the ideal world. Okay. So the effort in Texas to find survivors, I think, is continuing, and I guess at this point, it's very difficult to keep the hope up that more survivors will be found. The most recent date numbers that I have is that 104 people have been confirmed dead, including at least 27 children and counselors from the beloved Camp Mystic So not all of the 27 are children. Some of them are counselors. I'm guessing they must be adults. In Kerr County, where the Camp Mystic is located, at least 56 adults and 28 children were killed. 10 Mystic campers and 1 counselor remain unaccounted for. So we're still holding out hope for them. The flooding came in the early morning hours, with rainfall causing the nearby Guadalupe River to surge over 26 feet in less than an hour, according to Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. The rain didn't let up, with the flood risk ongoing and impacting many communities in the central part of the state over the next few days. As first responders and volunteers continued to scour the region for any sign of life, rescuing people clinging to trees using helicopters, the death toll steadily rose. Parents nationwide looked on with anxiety and horror as the toll at Camp Mystic became clear. Photos of the aftermath show children's bunks caked in mud, belongings strewn about, in a building with an entire wall missing. We will not stop until every missing person is found, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has pledged. Okay, so they're asking for prayers. There were over 700 girls at the Camp Mystic when flood waters overwhelmed the century-old camp. Officials have said among those reported dead are the camp's owner, campers Sarah Marsh, 8, Hannah and Rebecca Lawrence, 14, and counselor Chloe Childress, 19. I was talking yesterday about how this might possibly relate to God's providence. Not that God, certainly not that God caused the flood, or that he, caused the people in Texas not to make the proper preparations for a flood, as looks like they should have, but they decided some months ago that warning system would cost too much, and so they decided not to put it in. So God, that was not God, right? That was man's portion of responsibility, the human portion of responsibility. But well, here's something that you can mull over. Is this a coincidence, or is there a connection? And I confess, anyway, let me just spit it out. So one Korean TV channel, which has been authoritative on this issue in the past, is reporting that Park Cha-han has been booked as a suspect, but booked without detention. In other words, she's still in the Cheongpyeong Palace, but her legal status in the current ongoing scandal involving the former president that has now changed from material witness to that of suspect. And booked, I looked it up, and this means basically that the prosecution, and this is not being done by the police, it's being done by the prosecution, which is often the system here in Korea. The prosecution has basically created a file, and they are gathering evidence on her to see whether they can build a criminal case that they can against her, that they will then, if they are successful in building what they think is a successful criminal case, then they will take that to a judge, to a court, and there will be a trial. And so it is an important development in her situation here in Korea. I don't want anyone to think that I'm gloating or serves a right or anything like that, because this is if we look at it from Father's point of view, Father is really heartbroken over what has happened with Park Cha-han. Her betrayal, of course, was extremely heartbreaking, and now she's having to, or now it looks like she's going to be paying the consequences of that betrayal. And it's not something for us to be joyful about. Instead, it's something for us to pray for her repentance as quickly as possible. Sometimes people who have a lot of wealth and a lot of power need to have that power and wealth stripped away from them before they can see reality and see themselves for who they really are. And that may be the kind of thing that is developing right now. One thing I think is certain is that I don't see how she will be going to America ever again. Even if somehow, she is found innocent, or if they decide not to charge her or something like that, I think maintaining her green card in America in this present day may be a difficult thing. And so she, I think, will be in the palace. And also the same channel that is reporting the information about Hak Ja Han is also reporting that her assistant, and those of you who know will know who I'm talking about, her assistant was also put on the list of people who must not leave the country. However, this female assistant pleaded with the authorities, saying that her American husband is critically ill and that she had to go be with her husband. And the authorities, for whatever reason, gave her permission to leave the country for that purpose. Anyway, she has not returned, and I don't know what her plans are. But anyway, so her assistant is also not beside Hak Ja Han right now. So it looks like she may be in an increasingly lonely situation, and but what did Jesus say? That to those to whom much is given, much will be expected. Yes. So anyway, we'll continue to watch this case and continue to follow and see what finally develops. From an external point of view, Hak Ja Han is just sort of peripheral case, and the main case is the former president and his wife, and the current government is going after them because, well, revenge politics, as I've mentioned before, is very much a part of the Korean culture, and Hak Ja Han is just sort of a peripheral, or maybe even you might say collateral damage. But from a providential point of view, actually, it's the opposite. Hak Ja Han is the central case, and I don't think God cares too much about the former president or his wife, whether the Chanel bag was actually given, or where that Chanel bag is right now, or what else was there? I've forgotten, but anyway, that's the peripheral case as far as God is concerned. But what happens to Hak Ja Han is, for Father's perspective, is that. But although Father finds it heartbreaking, he's not going to intervene on her behalf, I don't expect. It's good that she take as much responsibility as possible on the earth before she goes to spirit world, in my opinion. That's how I see it. And so I think it is likely that will involve perhaps even a jail sentence. Although, given what I know about South Korean sort of sentiments, I keep asking myself, are they really going to put in jail an 83-year-old woman who is not healthy? She can barely see. She's almost blind, actually. And she always needs someone, whenever she's moving, she needs someone to hold her, guide her. So will they really put that kind of person into jail and incarcerate her? I have a question about that. But And we'll have to see. We'll have to see. Yeah. What actually transpires. Anyway, this case is not going to go quickly. It's going to go slowly, and so we'll be coming back to it from time to time. So the question is this, this happens as the Christian girls in Texas were taken to spirit world and making some kind of an ultimate sacrifice. Is God using their sacrifice in some way related to Hak Ja Han's situation? I don't know. I don't know how spirit world works, but I think it is interesting for us to ponder. Okay. All right, then let's go and look at what's going on here. Here, Japan and Korea have been hit with a warning that they're going to get 25% tariffs unless they are able to work out a deal with the United States before August 1. And so President Trump is sending out letters to, as we said yesterday, I think about 100 countries saying that, hey, these are the tariffs that I'm going to charge you, and you better come to a deal with us. And remember, I said yes. We read an article yesterday by Scott Bessent saying, "Oh no, this is not an extension of the deadline. We're just telling them what the tariff is going to be when it would come August 1st." So I don't know. Does that make sense to you? It's not a deadline, right? Not a deadline. Okay. We're just telling them that this is when things are going to start. Okay. All right. I mean, these people, they put their creative juices to work to come up with these kinds of excuses. So let's go ahead and take them seriously and give them credit for creativity. All right. All right. So that continues. And so I see this morning that the dollar is stronger. It's up above 97 now. Not quite getting to the 100 point, but it's stronger. And the Japanese yen is weaker against the US dollar. And the Korean won actually is a little bit stronger against the US dollar this morning. Anyway, things will develop there. Okay. And let's take a look at what Japan is saying. Japan has an election coming up. So this, I think it's coming up in about 2 weeks, I guess. About roughly 2 weeks. It's later this month. So that's also going to be affected by this. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba said on Tuesday that Japan would continue negotiations with the United States to seek a bilateral trade deal that benefits both countries. The remark came in response to U.S. President Donald Trump's notification via a letter that Japan, along with South Korea, would be hit with 25% tariffs from August 1. While Tokyo and Washington have failed to reach an agreement so far, some progress has been made in talks that helped Japan avert a hike in U.S. tariffs to around 30% or 35% as suggested recently by Trump. Ishiba told a meeting with the cabinet ministers to discuss Japan's strategy on the tariffs. We have received a proposal from the United States to swiftly proceed with negotiations toward the newly set August 1 deadline, and that depending on Japan's response, the content of the letter could be revised, Ishiba said. Okay. And with Japan, trade talks between the United States and Japan have been going on for a long, long time, at least 40 years. And always the big sticking point is agriculture and cars, automobiles, all right? You don't see too many American cars in Japan. That's just a fact. That's just a fact. And I mean, do you blame them? I think every car I've owned in America was a Toyota, I believe. Oh, one. I got a South Korean car, which turned out to be a real lemon. Anyway, but I've never actually paid money to buy an American car, I confess. So, I mean, I'm not, and we've gone through some of the reasons, right? There are European cars in Japan, and European car manufacturers go to the trouble of changing the steering wheel from the left side to the right side. Okay, so because Japanese in Japan, they drive on the left, but Americans don't. So you're driving on the left, and you're driving on the left-hand side of the road, and you're on the left-hand side of the car. So you've got the center line over here on the other side of the passenger seat, and over here you've got a sidewalk, right? So you can tell it's uh, not the most convenient way to drive, right? So I'm just saying, if American car companies want to sell cars in Japan, there are a few things they can do to improve their sales, I suspect. But the American manufacturers say, well, the market is too small. Okay, well, there you go. You're not, that's your choice. That's your choice. Anyway, well, and of course the agriculture. I've explained the agriculture before, especially the rice. Japan has been growing rice for more than 1,000 years, and trust me, they're not going to stop now. Even though rice manufacturing is far more efficient than in the United States, and it tastes the same, but the Japanese farmers are a strong supporting group of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, for one thing. And besides, rice is, as I've explained, rice is not only cultural, it's not only economic, it's religious. Remember I told you about the emperor planting rice every spring? Remember that? Yeah. The emperor actually puts on his boots and he goes out and there's a little plot, especially for him to do that every year. And he plants rice. He actually transplants the seedlings. And in the autumn, they harvest that rice. I don't know if he does it himself, but anyway, the rice is harvested in the autumn, and then that gets offered to the gods. So it's also religious. So that's how deeply ingrained rice is in the Japanese culture. So they're not going to give it up. I mean, no, Kim Jong-un is not going to give up nuclear weapons. Japan is not going to give up rice. Right? It's just finished. It's just no more argument. But America keeps trying, and they've been trying for 40 years. And well, for one thing, Japanese people are not eating as much rice as they used to. That's true. But so Japanese rice production is going down. And I know that the price of rice has been going through the roof recently in Japan because of a number of reasons. But still, no matter. It doesn't make any difference. They're not going to compromise on rice. They may compromise a little. We'll have to see what they do. But Ishiba, Ishiba is from Tottori, which is a rural prefecture. And so he knows very well the importance of rice in Japanese culture. He's not a city dude, that's for sure. Okay. All right, let's see here. Let's go to, okay. I gotta keep, I want to make sure I don't make the same mistake as yesterday and cut myself out of the Zoom call. All right, let's go to, where shall we go to? Let's see. Let's go look at Breitbart this morning. Okay. And already, there's of course, all the blame game going on regarding the Texas thing. And I think the proper way to do these things is to do search and rescue and recovery, and then look for how to prevent this after that. But of course, Democrats are not going to wait for that. They're going to start the blame game immediately because they know that President Trump is the one that they want to blame. And of course, this is all about power. It's not about the people in Texas. It's all about power and all about the election next year's fall. Okay, NWS Union. I rarely agree with him, but Trump is right, they say. Okay. And liberals reveal themselves as monsters and rush to politicize deaths of Christian girls. That's really terrible. Yeah, let's see here. Federal judge blocks. We could have expected this, right? Provision of a big, beautiful bill that defunds Planned Parenthood. That's expected. And I'm sure that this will go through the courts. And I'm sure that it will go to the Supreme Court eventually. A federal judge on Monday temporarily halted a provision in the President Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill, blocking taxpayer dollars from going to Planned Parenthood through Medicaid. U.S. District Judge Indira Talwani, who was appointed by President Barack Obama, yeah, there you go, that's not surprising, swiftly issued a temporary restraining order on the same day Planned Parenthood filed its lawsuit, blocking the provisions for 14 days and ordering the Department of Health and Human Services to take all steps necessary to ensure that Medicaid funding continues to be dispersed to Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood alleges in its lawsuit that Congress targeted Planned Parenthood out of other abortion providers and how it wrote the provision which bars Medicaid funding for 1 year. While the provision does not explicitly name Planned Parenthood, the organization is the only abortion provider that falls under the restrictions outlined in the bill. Planned Parenthood also argued that having its Medicaid funding cut off would have devastating effects on the organization. So, yeah, we're worried about the organization, right? Not the babies in the womb. We're worried about the organization. That's the leftist for you. Planned Parenthood has claimed that nearly 200 of its clinics are being at risk of closure because of the defunding measure. Okay. Great. Anyway, many Planned Parenthood members will be required to lay off staff and curtail services, with serious adverse consequences for many patients served at those centers, even if they do not use Medicaid to access services. Worse still, oh no, does it get worse? Members may be forced to shutter a substantial number of their health centers nationwide, many of which are in rural or underserved areas without alternative providers, the lawsuit reads. Okay. Defunding abortion providers through the reconciliation process allowed the Senate to bypass the critical 60-vote threshold for a simple majority vote, instead capitalizing on Republicans' overall trifecta. While federal funding for abortions is barred by the Hyde Amendment, except in cases of rape, incest, or life of the mother, pro-life opponents argue no federal funds should be used to prop up any organization that performs abortions. Planned Parenthood and its affiliates said in a statement that they are grateful the court acted swiftly to block this unconstitutional law, attacking Planned Parenthood providers and patients. A White House official told the outlet in response to the ruling the Trump administration is ending the forced use of federal taxpayer dollars to fund or promote elective abortion, a common sense position that the overwhelming majority of Americans agree with. And I've told you before that my wife and I have we have Medicare, but we also have a secondary payer, which is actually not an insurance. It's a Christian, what do they call it? Bill sharing, medical bill sharing organization, kind of. So in every second sentence, they'll say, "This is not insurance. This is not insurance. Don't tell anybody this is." So it's not insurance, all right? But one reason that I like this is that I know that my premiums, and we pay premiums every month, my premiums will not be used for abortions. I know that for a certainty. My premiums for Medicare, that's another thing. But at least my premiums for this secondary payer are not going to go to abortions, and I like that. And in fact, they will not pay for any medical expenses that come as a result of what they call non-Christian lifestyle, such as drunk driving, such as lung cancer resulting from smoking, such as sexually transmitted disease resulting from relationships outside the family, outside the outside the heterosexual marriage. So I like that. I like that, and it helps me sleep a little bit better at night. But I'm not funding Medicaid abortions. At least, well, not Medicaid anyway. But I don't know. I don't know if I guess private insurers if I had it, would probably be paying for abortions. But anyway, I'm not, at least that part of my premium, that premium is not going to abortions, which I like. And, I'm not going to tell you the name of my organization because I want you to do your own research. And there are a number of different providers out there that then you can look up and see which one is best for you. Okay. All right. So yes, Planned Parenthood, and we'll see how this goes, and I'm sure it will go to the Supreme Court eventually. President Trump fights on. Yes. So we'll see. Which district is this, by the way? It doesn't say. Let me see. It doesn't say in the article which district this is. Let me look it up. Quality of reporting. Seems like a pretty obvious piece of information to include. Yep, here we go. District of Massachusetts. United States District Judge of the United States District Court for the District of Massachusetts. Okay. Not surprising. Okay, all right. Okay. Share this again for you. All right. And Obama, an Obama appointee. Now we have to work through these things. And it's going to take, not just President Trump's term, but another term as well. And, with Musk doing what he is, who knows? Now, I think Vance is not going to have quite the cakewalk in 28 as we were hoping. That's for sure. Musk with his money, and also Andrew Yang, I noticed, is sort of hinting that he may join Musk in that new anti-uni party. Andrew Yang, you may remember, ran for the Democratic nomination for president. When was that? I guess that was in 2020, I guess, when Obama was, that Obama eventually went out. Yeah, I guess that was 2020. And I was saying at the time that this guy does not really belong in the Democrat Party. He believes in private enterprise. And in fact, he has some sort of program where he helps people start businesses or educate themselves or be educated about how to start businesses and so forth. He's about private enterprise. He's about personal responsibility and so forth. So yeah, so what's this guy doing in the Democratic Party in the first place? So obviously he's not really fitting into today's Democratic Party for sure. 5 years later, I mean, if he didn't fit in 2020, he's certainly not fitting today. So he may be joining Musk, and well, I suppose he may take votes away from Democrat candidates. We'll have to see what best would be if Musk would just leave well enough alone. Anyway, let's see. All right, let's see. Let's see here. Netanyahu tells Trump at dinner he nominated him for a Nobel Peace Prize. Well, Nobel Peace Prize is a very, very, very leftist organization. And I think they nominated Obama, and they gave the Peace Prize to Obama, remember? They gave the Peace Prize to Obama simply for winning the presidency of the United States. And of course, Obama went off and started 3 new wars and expanded 4 wars that he inherited. So there you go. And that's the kind of person that gets the Nobel Peace Prize these days. So yeah, President Trump's not going to get it, but I think, Netanyahu, quite frankly, is trying to suck up to Trump. Pakistan also nominated President Trump, or they said we're going to nominate him, I guess. But then 3 or 4 days later, Trump bombed Iran. So I think maybe that nomination may have gotten lost in the mail, I think. Okay. Let's see here. Federal judge blocks provision. Okay, we got it done. Right. South Africa faces 30% U.S. tariff hike. Okay. Marla's opinion pieces Musk is on a generational losing streak. And Trump now is going to send more weapons to Ukraine. Whoops. Yeah, you have to you gotta pay attention because he goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But he says we have to. President Donald Trump revealed that the United States will be sending more weapons to Ukraine, explaining that they are getting hit very hard. During a dinner with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, I don't know if this was before or after he got the Nobel Peace Prize nomination. Trump was asked if he was planning to send more weapons to Ukraine. Trump's comments come after the Trump administration announced at the beginning of the month that it was pausing shipments of certain weapons to Ukraine. Per the outlet, White House Deputy Secretary Anna Kelly explained last week that the Defense Department made the decision to halt weapons shipments after a review found American military stockpiles to be low. And anyway, his answer was, they have to be able to defend themselves. They're getting hit very hard now. They're getting hit very hard. We're going to have to send more weapons, defensive weapons, primarily, well, why not only, but they're getting hit very hard, very hard. Okay, well, come on, Donald, get it together. Surely he must realize that the Ukraine war is distracting America from China. And as I said, I think, I would encourage, I'm going to go a little bit further today than I did yesterday. I would encourage President Trump to make the difficult decision to say, listen, Ukraine, we've got a bigger fish to fry right now, China. And we'll come back to you later. Okay, we'll come back to you later. And we'll help you, if Russia takes over your entire territory, just know that that's not going to be the end of it. Once we deal with China, we'll come back to you. I think President Trump needs to make that decision now. So and maybe the people in Ukraine may not like what I'm saying, but I think not just for America, but for the world, and certainly from an America First perspective, we need to do that. We cannot be distracted by Ukraine any further. Okay. Biden, it was on Biden's watch that this war began. It was his weak leadership that brought about this war. And not only Biden, but also Obama, Clinton, and Bush, so both sides, Republican and Democrat, failed to stand up to Russia. And now we are where we are. So if you have complaints, I think mail them to Biden's and Obama's address, especially Obama's address, since Biden was basically a third term for Obama. All right, here, this is interesting. This is in the Epoch Times. I'm going to share this with you. Fiji pushes back on China's military ambitions, calls for Pacific unity. Okay. It's the kind of thing that father would approve of very differently. The country's stance is the last sign of a shifting power dynamic, latest sign, not last portion, latest sign of a shifting power dynamic in the South Pacific, experts say. So father established the Island Nations Federation for World Peace, right? You have the Peninsula nations, you have the continental nations, everybody else, but especially with Japan as the main island nation, he established the Island Nations Federation for World Peace. And at the time, at the founding address of that organization, he warned about China taking over the island nations of the Pacific. So here, Fiji apparently is pushing back right now. In a rebuke to Beijing's growing influence in the Pacific, Fijian Prime Minister declared during a visit to Australia last week that his country would not allow China to build military bases in the region and urged other Pacific nations to unite in resisting China's geopolitical ambitions. Who would welcome them? Not Fiji, he said during a speech at the National Press Club in Canberra on July 2nd. His remarks are one of the strongest public statements by a Pacific Island leader against Beijing's attempts to expand its military footprint. China's embassy in Fiji swiftly denied any intention to establish military bases in the region. Oh, well, no. Who, us? No. For one thing, we like to build our own islands, or something like that, right? However, many remain unconvinced. Analysts say the Prime Minister's comments reflect a broader movement among Pacific Island nations supported by the United States, Australia, and other democratic allies to assert greater strategic independence in the face of rising Chinese assertiveness. Fiji's stance is the latest sign of a shifting power dynamic in the South Pacific. Tensions surged in September 2024 when China test-fired an intercontinental missile with a mock warhead in the Pacific Ocean, triggering security concerns from governments of Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, Japan, and Taiwan. Fiji's president raised the issue at the United Nations General Assembly in September 2024, urging respect for our region and an end to provocative missile tests. The episode, analysts say, marked a turning point for many island nations increasingly wary of Beijing's intentions. And Shengmin Shi, a senior research fellow at Taiwan's Institute for National Defense and Security Research, said that the Fiji Prime Minister's statement reflects more than just a diplomacy, and that it is a calculated strategic move. First, Fiji is working to lower military tensions in the region, wary of antagonizing major security partners like the United States and Australia, he told the Epoch Times. Fiji wishes to retain economic and security assistance from the democratic states. Second, Shen believes that Rabuka, likely the prime minister, made the comments with the backing, or at least the encouragement, of Washington and Canberra. Such support likely emboldened Fiji to take a public stance against the Chinese Communist Party, Shen said. Third, well, especially with President Trump in Washington, D.C., do you think he would have felt confident to make this kind of a statement with Biden in Washington, D.C., or Harris? With Harris? Second, Shen believes that Rabuka will likely make the backing again. Third, Fiji hopes to rally other Pacific nations to adopt a united front. Rabuka is signaling to his regional peers that it's time to stand together against China's creeping influence in the South and Western Pacific, he said. In addition to public statements, Fiji has taken concrete actions to limit Beijing's influence on its soil. In early 2023, the current Prime Minister's government halted police cooperation with Beijing. And in March 2024, it ordered all Chinese police officers to leave the country, which significantly eroded a controversial 2011 police cooperation agreement with China's Ministry of Public Security. The decision followed growing concerns over Chinese law enforcement's presence in nearby countries, such as the Solomon Islands and Kiribati, where Beijing has already deployed police forces, along with maritime surveillance vessels in the region. At the press event in Australia, the Prime Minister reiterated that Chinese Coast Guard operations must respect Fiji's sovereignty and maritime boundaries. He is also championing a new regional initiative, the Ocean of Peace, designed to strengthen the sovereignty and solidarity of Pacific Island nations. The proposal aims to push back against foreign coercion, whether economic or military, and is expected to be discussed at the Pacific Islands Forum Summit in September. The initiative includes all 18 member nations and is drawing attention from both regional and global powers. The stakes are high, say experts. China has long sought to expand its presence in the Pacific, a region that holds strategic importance for the U.S. military, especially with major U.S. installations in Guam and Hawaii. According to William Chung, an assistant researcher at the Taiwan Institute for National Defense, China's outreach in the South Pacific is not only about challenging United States and Australian dominance, but also about undercutting Taiwan's diplomatic presence. The Pacific remains one of the few regions where Taiwan still has formal allies. The CCP's expansion aims to isolate Taiwan diplomatically and exert pressure on U.S. military logistics hubs, Chung told the Epoch Times. Fiji's latest stance is a direct rebuttal of Beijing's flag-planting strategy. In response to China's growing influence, the United States and its allies have dramatically increased aid and infrastructure investments in the Pacific. Since 2022, Washington has pledged more than $4 billion in assistance through its Indo-Pacific strategy, targeting maritime security, renewable energy, and digital infrastructure. In 2024, the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, they call it the Quad, comprising the United States, Australia, Japan, and India, announced expanded technical cooperation with Pacific nations to reduce their dependence on Chinese investment. India, in particular, has signaled greater interest in the region, offering alternative development models and technology transfer programs. Analysts say these efforts have given Pacific nations more bargaining power and real options beyond Beijing's orbit. While the Pacific Islands may seem remote to many Americans, the region is becoming a new front in the global contest between democracy and authoritarianism, say experts. Or, let's say democracy and let's call it for what it is, democracy and communism. The Prime Minister's speech may be remembered as a key moment when the tide began to turn. These nations face chronic budget constraints and fragile governance, said Chung. Instead of siding with the CCP, it's better for them to remain neutral between China and the United States and benefit from both sides. Nevertheless, when it comes to security, allowing a Chinese military base would be a game changer that could shatter the current balance, according to Chung. Indeed, yes. Right. Fiji's statement may be just the beginning. As the Pacific Islands step into a more prominent role in international geopolitics, a new regional order, one that prioritizes sovereignty, collective security, and peace, is apparently emerging. All right, well, peace. Peace is a good idea. Okay. Praise God. Yes. So finally, about what is it now? 30 years? When were the Island Nations for World Peace? That was in the 90s, wasn't it? That Father was creating those organizations, Island Nations, Pacific Nations, or Peninsula Nations, et cetera, et cetera. So, but they have what they call the Pacific Island Forum, Pacific Islands Forum Summit in September. And so this is the kind of organization that Father created, but Father's organization no longer is really active. And so they've created their own organization. And, as I look back and when I see where Father's Foundation is today, it's really tragic in many ways that we could really be at the forefront of something like this if Father's Foundation had been inherited properly to the second king. But anyway, we'll get there. We'll get back there somehow. Fortunately, we know that one thing we know about predestination is that the eventual accomplishment of God's will is 100% certain. Just, human beings have to get around to doing our portion of responsibility at some point. All right, let's see. What else do we have here? Okay. And Maureen Dowd in the New York Times, I guess, the GOP lack of funding made Texas flood worse. Well, that's not true. And the White House is really calling them out. And as it says here, National Weather Service had extra staff during Texas floods. Disaster response not impacted by Trump's cuts. Okay, let's see. Criminal illegal immigrants being sent to Alligator Alcatraz in Florida. And they got 1,355 in Sanctuary State, Colorado. ICE did. Okay. Heartbreaking stories coming from Texas. and people trying to use it for political purposes. Taliban grapple with Iran returning nearly 500,000 Afghans. And Homan to triple down on the sanctuary cities. He's really doing a good job, isn't he? But he's doing a good job in terms of what President Trump wants him to do. But I've expressed some consternation over some of the things that ICE is doing. But I'm not going to quibble too much because it is understandable. Yeah. All right, let's see here. 10% more for anti-American BRICS guys. We had that yesterday, I think. And Houthis return to maritime terrorism. Okay, so people are still trying to find ways to create mayhem. And Tulsi declassifies Biden admin docs, exposes weaponization of intel against Americans. Let's see what this is about. So, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard's task force charged with carrying out President Donald Trump's executive orders related to the intelligence community is interviewing whistleblowers who could expose Russia collusion hoaxers, analyzing previous election processes to investigate vulnerabilities and more as a part of the administration's goal to maximize transparency. Well, wait a second. This is talking about what they're going to do, right? Interviewing, or what they're doing. They're not telling us what they've done. And this thing about this isn't Tulsi Gabbard. This is more of a sort of Pam Bondi thing. But remember Pam Bondi saying that, oh yeah, the client list is on my desk. Remember that? Okay, the suicide part. All right, they say, what is it? Kash Patel and Dan Bongino say they're going to release a video that shows that no one went into the cell or went into that area, so it had to be suicide. But the lack of a client list, that really bothers me, or lack of any kind of records, right? I guess Tulsi Gabbard seems to be saying that she only has a list of victims and not of perpetrators. So she seems to be saying. So she says that she's not going to release the names of victims or of innocent people who could be stigmatized in some way. So what does that mean? Does it mean Trump is compromised? Or I think let's try to find other explanations as well. Remember in the early days of this situation, there was talk that Epstein was working with Mossad or some other intelligence organization. If that's true, if that were true, then you could see how that intelligence organization would go into the island very, very quickly after everything broke, and would quickly sort of hoist away the computers that had the records and the client list. And so perhaps that client list is currently in the hands of some country's intelligence organization, perhaps Israel, perhaps CIA, who knows? Perhaps the British, who knows? So that's a possibility. That may be the reason that FBI and FBI says they don't have a client list. That would be one explanation. The client list exists. It's just that it's in someone else's hands, and someone else went in there quickly right after things broke and removed it from the island. That's a possibility. That makes sense to me. And I think that makes more sense to me than the idea that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino have somehow been compromised. Both of them. They seem, I don't know them personally, but they seem to be pretty upright people. So I think we ought to give them the benefit of the doubt. And there may be other explanations as well. that's the one that I came up with. Maybe you can come up with others, but it does disturb me though, doesn't it? And I'm sure it disturbs you as well. All right, let's see what else do we have here? We've been to Newsmax. I don't think we have. No, let's go to Newsmax. Okay. The White House with Trump, Bibi predicts dire threat from a future Palestinian state. Well, unfortunately, what he says makes sense. So what is the fundamental solution? I've given it already. Father's solution. Intercultural, interreligious blessing. On a big scale, not just one or two, not just somebody's granddaughter or something like that. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Monday he wanted peace with Palestinians, but described any future independent state as a platform to destroy Israel. For that reason, he said sovereign power of security must remain with Israel. But some, let's see. Okay, some Palestinians live on the West Bank and also in West Jerusalem. And but we'll see. All right, here. Did we already do this Newsmax? Looks like we did. Let's go to the Federalist. We haven't been to Federalist in quite a while. Maybe it's not coming up. Why is that? Don't tell me my VPN's gonna be a problem. Yeah, okay. All right, let's try. Where's my VPN? Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Let me share it for a bit. No. There we go. Okay, got it. All right. Let's see. Okay. All right. Okay, no, the Texas floods are not some mysterious part of God's plan. Well, thank you for saying that. But once that happens, then God can use the sacrifice sometimes. Christians are permitted to hate sin and death without explaining how they fit into some inscrutable providence of Almighty God. Yes. So, yeah, especially some atheists try to describe God as some sort of a puppet master that's sitting up there, and deciding who gets killed in floods and who gets AIDS and stuff like that. Especially this British comedian, what's his name? Something or other, Gervais. He likes to do that kind of thing, which is just absolutely ridiculous and also offensive. And what else have they got? Media deploy a cadre of experts and advocates to lie about Medicaid. Yeah, okay. And the return of Superman signals a cultural shift in America. Really? Okay. It's a movie. You can see it if you like. And Citizen volunteers got 20,000 people who moved out of Pennsylvania off the voter rolls. Okay. Motherhood only feels like a penalty when women succumb to feminism. Yeah. Family, a two-parent family, heterosexual two-parent family, so important. And unfortunately, in our society today, families are sort of incentivized to have both parents working so as to provide a certain level of certain living standard for the family. And the same was true, with our family. We were living in the sort of Fairfax County area, and I could not support our family just on a Washington Times salary, and so my wife had to go to work. And our children paid the price, and they continue to pay the price today. I think now we're in a different era now, and I think we're in an era when people have more freedom to decide. Well, they have more choices, shall we say, more choices to decide what level of living standard they're going to maintain. And so, you can go to an area that matches your living standard. And frankly, that's kind of where we are right now in Korea. In Korea, as long as the dollar doesn't crash. If the dollar crashes, we're in trouble. We may have to move back to America. Anyways, so yes, but motherhood, but also, having just one breadwinner in the family, one major breadwinner in the family, especially during the years when the children are growing up, until your youngest graduates from high school. I would say that that's the case. Mm-hmm. Shooter attacking voter agents hours after Dems said their voters want blood. The Democrats seem to be the ones that are encouraging more violence, doesn't it? Doesn't seem that way. Anyway, I'm sure they will say the opposite. Anyway, gotta go. Thank you for being with us today. And tomorrow's Wednesday. We will continue our study of the change of blood lineage tomorrow. And so we will be going through Father's speeches again, as we've been doing the last several Wednesdays. Okay. This is Father's 3 speeches on the change of blood lineage, or blood lineage itself, that he gave at Tarrytown in January of 1973. Hope you joined us then. God bless, Godspeed, may his kingdom come quickly.